It is 2:30 p.m. and that means it is time for Supercharged. Hi, I'm Surma.
Oh, you want me to say my name? Look, I've never done this before. Look, have you not noticed? Different person standing here today.
That is a very long name.
Hi, I'm Jake.
And today we're going to do some streaming service worker. Cue the jazz. So, Jake, welcome. I'm actually really excited about this because to me it feels a little bit like an upgrade because not only do you know service worker, you actually kind of designed them.
Oh,
and you have hair.
That's true. Well, a little bit. It's a slight. Are you just easing into someone with more and more hair, and eventually?
Yeah, like eventually, I'm gonna have.
I'm
gonna have a fro, and it's gonna get really interesting. So, we already said in the teaser that we are gonna do, or you are gonna do, a blog with a streaming service worker.
Yes.
So what? I mean, I know streams, I know service worker, but when you say streaming service worker, what exactly what do you mean?
OK, so service workers are streaming by default. Like if you do like a fetch and you pass the response back to the page, or like if you get something from the cache, that all streams. Like it means that the page can start receiving bits of the response while the service worker is still busy.
So something could the end of the page doesn't need to arrive for the first parts to appear on screen.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is like really useful. Like if you've got a long page, like even something like a news article, it means that you only have to receive the top and you can start reading it, even though they're still downloading the rest of the article.
So, but when you say service worker is streaming by default, then why is what you're doing in any kind difficult or worth putting on a live stream?
Well, OK, so what we're going to do is we're going to make a single stream that's built up of different streams. Like, so we're going to take some stuff from the cache and some stuff from the network, and we're going to merge it together in one stream and serve that up. And that will mean that we can get on screen really quickly with the cache stuff.
And that's important because usually we're telling people over and over, like the time to first paint or first meaningful paint is super important. Like if you're on screen quickly and keep the user busy with just consuming most on a blog, especially with the content, while the rest spins up in the background, that is a super good user experience.
Yeah, and it improves the perception of performance as well.
Yeah.
And it also gives you an opportunity to kind of, so if the stuff from the cache arrives and the network stuff's taking a while, it gives you the opportunity to kind of put messages up there going, yeah, we're still trying.
OK, yeah.
That sort of thing.
Which, again, is better UX, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, with you being here, it makes sense that you do the coding today.
Yeah.
And that means that I will be, as one person usually does on the Supercharged live stream, I will be monitoring the chat. So everybody, hi, welcome. If you have questions anytime, just put them in the chat. I'll try to keep up with whatever you say and incorporate it and distract Jake whenever I can.
Yep.
Make him stumble, make him do mistakes, because that's what we want to see, right? So I'd say let's just get into it and see where are we starting off? Because I think, are we going to do from scratch? Or are we going to take like a starting point?
Well, so a lot of service worker articles that I've seen, they do start from scratch. But I think like most of us, we have sites already. So
that's a good point, actually.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of start with something and then show how you could add a service worker to it without disrupting how the site already works.
Yeah, why don't you walk us through it, I guess?
Right, OK. So on my screen right now is what looks like my blog, although I recreated it.
Hashtag shameless self-plug.
Yeah, it's a self-plug. It's also my personal brand. But it's an existing site. This is how it works. And we're going to be able to add a service worker to it. And I wanted it to be something that was kind of more site-like than an app, and also something that would benefit from streaming, so something with articles as well.
That makes a lot of sense.
It doesn't have any of the kind of legal problems of showing an actual news website or something as well. So yeah, so this is it. You can sort of click into articles and go around. But I guess the important bit is how it's implemented.
Yeah.
So if we dive into the code here, this is a nodejs project built on top of Express.
Which we have used before. Like I think whenever we did any kind of backend work with Node, I think we have used Node in the Express in the past. So it shouldn't be. Everybody should at least know roughly what the API is. I'm just going to make that assumption here.
Well, my blog in real life is actually built on top of Django and Python. But I thought, let's stick to JavaScript everywhere.
That's probably a good call.
Yeah. Also, my Python is a lot worse than my JavaScript, and we're about to find out how bad my JavaScript actually is. So most of the interesting details. So I've got this post folder, which is a directory for each post.
I see.
There. And so we have like a meta JSON with sort of title, summary description.
So basically, it reminds me a little bit of GitHub Pages and Jekyll, but they have the metadata on the top of the file, while you put them in a separate file here, which I actually kind of prefer.
Well, so, and this is all server generated, but it could be done as a static build as well.
Yeah.
Having a server here means it's sort of easier to see quick changes. It's not going to have to be rebuild. So, so we can see where a post is built. So I've got this roots JavaScript, and this is where all the roots are. The important one that we're going to look at is this one. So this is the roots for an article. So you can see here it's built of, like, we get the your number.
The typical block path thing.
Exactly.
With a weird regex or whatever. That's not even the proper. It is a regex, isn't it?
Well, it's the one that Express uses.
Oh, it's the weird thing where you can capture parts of the thing and put them in a variable.
Yeah. So that's the name of the thing we're capturing, and then that's the regex for it.
See.
So a number 4 times, and then a slug. Is a slug a word that's used outside of, like, Django?
Yes, I definitely know that. It's in Jekyll as well. Hugo uses it as well. Maybe they started it, but by now it's a de facto technical term, even though I still think it. Slug. Is it a word?
It's fun to say. So yeah, and then it's just going and picking up those files. If it doesn't find them, it'll throw a 404.
Okay,
which will
cool.
be picked up later on. And then it's going to pass all of the details it finds into a templating engine. The content is passed through Marked, which is a markdown processor, and that will appear on the page. The templating system I'm using is nodejs.
Oh.
You came across that one before?
That is an implementation of an originally Python templating language, isn't it?
So you can see where I'm going. So
I think they're called nunchucks in Python.
Oh, well, in Python it's Ninja. So I'm coming from Django templating languages.
I
very
see.
similar.
Okay.
It just meant I could copy and paste what I already had.
Because you're really, really lazy, aren't you?
Well, that's the best kind of developers are supposed to be lazy. Is that
it is
true?
actually true. Like, if you're lazy, you're going to automate whatever you can automate.
So, and that's what we can see here. This is a post, and it's just all of the stuff coming out there. And yeah, and that works.
So in its current state, you're doing the app shell stuff on the server side. You probably have like a header, a footer.
Yes.
And that is being stitched together on the server side, and an entire page is being shipped.
Yeah, so this is the base here, and like
the buttery biscuit base.
Buttery biscuit base. Look, you need a new set of catchphrases. Now you've got someone else here. So yeah, you've got these blocks here, and you can replace those blocks in other templates.
I see.
And,
OK.
And that's how it works. So if we're going to add a service worker to this project, or well, indeed any project, step 1 has to be get your caching fixed, get it all correct. And I tried to skip that for this. I thought, well, I don't want to have to talk about lots of like normal HTTP caching, so I'll just hack around it. And then I kind of realized that I'm writing so much code working around bad caching. I should follow my own advice. We'll get a caching sorted first.
That is actually really good advice, because we keep seeing websites that use caching, trying to work around caching rather than fixing it.
Yeah.
And try to do like cache busting. Whenever you have to do cache busting, that is a smell that you probably just need to adjust your caching headers in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so that's what I did. That's kind of pre-prepared, because a lot of sites have this sorted already. And so we can see that the CSS there, the picture of me, it all has a version number there in the URL. So that's all taken care of. The CSS, well, anything with a version number in the URL is cache control for a year. Whereas everything else with static URLs, like the actual HTML itself, is cache control, no cache.
That makes sense.
So
actually, I think we have a micro tip coming up on this.
Good
on this topic as well. So keep your eyes on the channel. Which also means you should totally subscribe to this channel so that you know when these videos come out. So
what a professional!
I know,
That's
right?
Really good.
It's not the first time I'm doing this.
Like and subscribe. Excellent.
In case you're wondering, the code is the code going to be on GitHub later? Can we put it in our
the code's on GitHub now, so yeah.
We're going to put it, the bits we are writing today, or that Jake is writing today, going to put it in the typical UI element samples repository that we have for our supercharged episodes. I'm going to link to it in the description, so you can find that later and follow along if you want to like reiterate what we've been doing.
So, shall we add a service worker to this project?
Yes.
Yes, let's do that.
I give you 20 seconds. Go.
Can I code while on camera? That's a question. Because I can't code in real life, so maybe the camera will help. So I'm going to create a directory here called...
We have the first question, actually, and it's something that has...
First mistake.
Whenever I watch you work, it's something that's been driving me mad. Does Jake know that you can press Command-Alt-I to open DevTools?
No, I never do that. I always go for the right click.
I've been driven mad by this as well before. He always clicks.
And I type with one finger.
All right, so we're going to start with the service worker file.
Yes. Yes. So, and I'm just going
And
to.
that apparently is actually going to be written from scratch, which is cool.
I already can't type. Look at this. It's not.
Well, to be fair, you still have a lot more typos in your quote until you're actually worse than Paul.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So it's not that I'm bad at spelling, it's that I have race conditions in my fingers from my brain. So there we go. Let's just do console and hi. Excellent.
Isn't it called console.log?
Oh my God, I'm so happy you were here.
Have you ever written JavaScript before?
Never. This is new for me. Excellent. OK, so now I know this isn't going to work, right? Because I haven't created a root for it yet, so I'm going to do that now.
Oh, so you don't have you have not the static middleware. It's not involved at all.
So I do use the static middleware, but all the static files are the ones that are getting the version number added to them automatically. Yeah, so I've got a static folder here, and then the build system that there is kind of going and sort of renaming all of the files.
And that allows you to put an expiration date of a year on it, because if the file changes, the name will change, and that means it will never clash.
And an important detail is that you don't want to do that with a service worker. You generally want your service worker to be no cache, because the browser is going to go to that same URL where it previously got the service worker to look for updates. So you don't want to be revisioning it.
Every browser has will recheck after 24 hours this, no matter what the caching header is, but sometimes that is already too long, because sometimes a person might be stuck on the old version of the service worker for 24 hours. Yeah,
if you break your site, you don't want it to be broken for a day, right? So yeah, I always use no cache. So I'm going to set up a root here. Let's do JS, and there we go. See, I'm already getting loads of things wrong. Right, so I want to serve up that file, so I'm going to create an input. And we're going to use stream straight away. We're going to go straight
look at
away
that.
with that. So, and I'm going to get the directory name, go up one level because we're currently in this server directory.
Are you going to do any processing on the service worker file?
Why don't you wait? Why don't you wait?
Sorry,
right? Look, I've got some notes and a good order to do things.
The only reason I'm asking is I always do response.sendFile.
Ah, yes.
Which is a lazy way, but I feel like if you're going to do this, then you probably want to do some processing at some point.
That is true. So I am, so I'm doing sort of streaming stuff now, because that will become useful later on. Well spotted. So I should just be able to pipe like that.
Just to be clear, I don't know what he's doing today. I have not seen whatever he's going to do. Only he knows.
Well, I wouldn't even go that far. So
maybe he does.
So yeah, we now have our service worker all connected up. So we should get it to actually do something.
Well, I guess you would actually have to include it.
Yes, we will do that as well. But yeah, should we do that? Should we do that first?
Why not? I mean, it's interesting because when I first learned service worker, I was like, can I do console logs? Will I see them? It's a different thread, right? It's completely independent. But it turns out, as we will probably see in a couple of seconds, that you can do console logs and see them in DevTools.
Spoilers?
Well, I mean, imagine how developers feel if they couldn't console log. Personally, I don't ever use a debugger, but I use console logs. And I actually have a lot of beef with the name debugger, because it doesn't actually debug. The only thing it does, it slows everything down, so you can watch a creation fall apart over a long time, so you can find out who the culprit is. And it turns out the culprit is always yourself.
Absolutely.
So you might as well just replace the window with, it's you. You made a mistake. Fix it.
So what I've done here is just in the base template, which is used by all of the pages, I've just put a little script at the bottom there.
That's what's called progressive enhancement, I think.
Yes, also with the if statement for browsers that don't support service worker, that's there to catch those. So yeah, we should now be able to see in the console.
Interesting.
Yes. OK. So scripts don't have strict MIME type checking by default. Module scripts do, and service workers do as well. And I haven't actually set up a MIME type for that. So back in the old roots, I am going to set the content type header.
So basically, a service worker file will be just straight up the client if it doesn't have application/JavaScript as its content type header.
Absolutely. Oh, well, it needs to be one of the valid JavaScript MIME types.
And there's multiple
nodes as well. So But yeah, so the idea is it's a security measure because we don't want, like, if you have an XSS, we don't want someone to sort of be able to take one of the things they made, like a text or a post or something, and sort of be able to register that as a service worker. So yeah, we can see now we got
a console log.
Console log, excellent. I suppose you probably want something more than that.
Does it work offline yet?
The console log will.
Amazing.
But so far, that's it. OK, you want something working offline?
OK.
Let's do that. So with Service Worker, you get a fetch event for every request for one of your pages, but also for every request from those pages as well. So I'm going to...
I've recently read some of your code, and for some reason, it is totally ingrained in my muscle memory to always type self.add event listener and self.skip waiting, whatever there is. That is not necessary. Self is basically the equivalent of window on the main thread. Everything that is defined on self or window will just be available without typing out self or window.
And I find that developers, myself including, are entirely inconsistent on when they put window at the start and when they don't. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to respond with fetching the thing that the browser's asked for. So that will be just kind of transparent, sort of do the normal thing. But I'm going to catch it in case it doesn't work, which offline would be one of those cases. And I'm going to create a new response and just say, like, you is offline.
So when it fails, the catch handler will trigger.
Yes.
And we will instead just return with you're offline.
Exactly.
So now we have, basically, we just made the blog work offline.
Yes, kind of. Well, there's one thing that we need to sort of watch out for. So we can see, so this is the service worker that failed because of the MIME type. So let's just get rid of that. This is the service worker that they're using now. Now, if I refresh the page, what's going to happen is that new service worker that we just added is going to come in, and it's going to be waiting to activate. So service workers, by default, they don't get rid of the old version while it's still in use.
Yeah.
And it's still in use by this page.
Why is that, though? Like, why can't it just take over?
So another thing that, as developers, we don't really handle very often is the idea that we can have 3 different versions of our app running at once.
Just imagine multiple tabs, I guess, right?
Yeah, multiple tabs where one's been open for a while, you open a new one. That's kind of using new stuff.
And a lot of people who have opened so many tabs that you can't even see the favicons anymore, fav icons, and then you just open a new version because you forgot it's already open somewhere else.
Well, yeah, when I get to the point where it starts looking like a table of elements, that's when I abandon. I just need to just close them all. If I don't know what they are, will I really miss them?
No, not really.
Well, the answer is usually yes. But so I'm going to skip the waiting phase on here, and we'll be doing that with code shortly. But now we should have a site that works offline. So if I click offline on there and refresh the page, it says use offline. There you go.
Perfect. Ship it.
Are we done? Do you want more?
Well, it's not streaming yet. I mean, it is kind of streaming, but not really streaming.
Not really streaming. That is fair enough.
We have to hold up that promise at least to call this episode done.
So I guess we should do an offline page that's within the style of designs.
Maybe.
That has some design to it, something like that.
Sounds good.
So I'm going to create that. I'm going to create a page. Let's have a look. So just in the templates here, I'm going to create offline. I'm just going to copy and paste one of the things I've already got. This is the template for the post that I'm stealing. The title of the page is going to be offline. All of this header stuff, like the meta properties, we don't need that.
Who needs that?
The title, just you are offline. Excellent. And the content, we can just say
please go online.
Please go. How do we want the user to solve this? Try refreshing while waving your phone around. There we go. Which is going to be especially amusing if they're actually on desktop when they do this, because they're hitting refresh and waving their phone around.
Or in a captive portal.
Yeah. So this is, I'm not going to create a root for this, because this doesn't need to sit at a constant URL. This can be a static asset as well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go along to the terrible build system I ended up making for this project, which almost certainly should have been Gulp or Webpack or something instead. But I thought it would be simpler to build it myself.
That's probably the most Jake thing you could have done.
Oh, it ate so much of my time. I shouldn't have done it. So yes, I'm going to add offline.html I'm going to send it into the static rev path with all of the other revisioned assets. And I'm going to render out a template, and it's the offline one. So when I save that, what hopefully, because the server is going to restart when it sees that code changing, and if everything has worked, we should see, yes. So we've got like offline HTML there. So and we can see that it's got all of the content.
All the nice markup and everything. Cool.
Excellent. So I'm going to copy that so we can see it in the browser.
Wow, you're lazy.
What? Well, you would remember that.
No,
you're
right.
Go on, what is it?
There's 6.
Right. OK. So let's see. Oh, look. In my history, I've clearly done this before. Right. And that
is a much better offline page than.
But we can currently only access it online, which doesn't feel quite right.
Defeats the purpose just a tiny bit.
So what I'm going to do is we need to take this page offline. We need to cache it, but not just the page itself. We've got these other assets as well.
Okay.
So we've got the page. We've got like the CSS. We've got this picture of me that should be available offline, I guess, and these social icons as well. So.
I personally would be very happy if I could look at your face while offline.
Well, you can. You know me. That's something. That's something we can just do in the same room together. OK, so we need to cache this page. So I guess going to go back into the old service work.
Yeah, so are you just going to straight up hard code the assets that you're going to cache, or are you going to like analyze the markup? Or OK, keep going. I guess I'm thinking ahead.
No, you're right, because this is the problem we're going to have. Because if I hard code all of those assets, then I'm going to have to change them every time we make a small change to the page.
True, because the revisions change as well, right?
Yes, exactly. So what I'm doing here is event.waitUntil, which is so the install event. This runs the first time the browser sees this version of the service worker.
OK.
And it's our opportunity to get everything sort of ready before this service worker starts actually controlling pages. So because I'm from the future, I'm going to use an async function here. So what we want to do here is get hold of a cache.
So we have a question. Are we going to use any tools like SW precache or Workbox? No. And the reason is pretty simple, because this is not about how to use a library. This is about we want to show how these libraries actually work, what they're actually doing under the hood, so you understand the concepts more. And then it actually is easier to use these libraries because you understand what they're doing and how you can debug the things they're supposed to be doing versus what they're actually doing.
Yes.
And also, as I said, Jake actually is one of the spec authors of Service Worker, so it would be a wasted opportunity to not actually talk about the low-level, the actual API of Service Worker itself and using a library instead. But these libraries definitely do have a place, so I encourage you to check them out and make a decision for yourself if you want to, for production, go this route and write it yourself or rely on a library. That is up for you to decide.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd say I just wanted to go as low level as possible with this stuff. But yeah, we've now hit the point that you were talking about of like, how do I get those URLs? And when I originally was playing with this, kind of deciding how to do it, and actually how I did it on my blog, is I just used the templating engine that I had sitting there.
Oh, so basically the Service Worker itself is the product of running through a template engine so you can add the revisions dynamically?
Yeah, but what happened was it messes with all of the syntax highlighting. The linter is like,
Yeah, I've been there.
This is bad. I saw actually you were writing JavaScript with PHP.
Yes, I just did that yesterday, and I'm generating JavaScript with PHP, and that is also just, in terms of syntax highlighting and like templating and template strings in JavaScript, it just gets weird to keep track of what is a JavaScript variable, what is a PHP variable. It can get really, really confusing.
So a kind of solution around, oh, my notes have fallen on the floor.
How
could I possibly continue
without these?
Oh, thank
Quickly,
you.
I didn't notice.
No one noticed. So I'm going to use static module. Have you heard of static module before?
No.
So this is a module by Substack. Also did Browserify, I believe. Yeah.
Oh, OK. Yeah. So Browserify was basically, I think, one of the first projects to convert packages for the Node ecosystem to run in the browser.
Yes.
Because Node would use require, and it doesn't exist on the web platform. And so it would need to like somehow handle that, and that was the project Browserify, I think.
Yes, and static module kind of has parts of that going on, because you can pipe a JavaScript thing through it.
Yeah.
And you can sort of modify parts of the JavaScript in quite a, well, I think it's quite a nice usable way. So if I do static to cache, and just for demo's sake, I'm just going to output hello. Now, once I do that, these modules are available inside my JavaScript.
OK.
Right, so because I don't like typing very much, I'm going to copy that. And up at the top here, I'm going to do const to cache. And I can use good old require statements. So if I've not messed it up, what I should be able to do here, right, and we can see that whole require statement has been replaced with.
Also, it just basically inlines.
Absolutely.
The module. That is nice. OK.
I love it. It's like, if you're doing something more involved, then I think like Webpack and things sort of do this better. But if you're just wanting to make small changes to, you don't want to bring in the whole of Webpack in, I think this is a really nice small way of doing it.
And that reminds me, something we preach probably every time and haven't done yet is, this is not production-ready code.
Oh, yeah.
We are going to write something that works. We're going to write something that is hopefully understandable. And I should say we. It's Jake this time. Something that you can read and understand concepts of, probably that shouldn't be pushed straight to production. There's lots of polish, lots of safety measures that we're probably going to skip on to keep the code terse and readable.
Yeah, and I'd say one of the things I'm doing here is like processing this JavaScript on every request as part of Express is one of the things that I would not do in production. You would, if you did that on the server, you would at least cache it so you're not doing it every time, or it would be part of your build script. And static modules compatible with all of that sort of stuff. You can use gulp or whatever to process these strings. Okay. But right, we don't want to just output hello. We want to output like all of the stuff we want to cache. So let's do that then. So I'm just going to create an array of the things I want to cache. So let's go for.
So these are going to be the file names without the revision.
Right, because what I can do then is map it across. So I've got like the thing which did all of the revisioning, keeps a hash of all of those things that it did. So I should just be able to do.
If you're looking for the ref package that Jake is using, you can't find it because he wrote it. Because why wouldn't he? It's going to be in the repository later if you're wondering how he did it. It's probably just tedious to write, not necessarily very complex, I imagine.
It was one of those things that I thought, like when I was halfway through writing it, I was like, I should not have done this. I should have just used gulp or
because
something.
It sounds deceptively simple. Just hash the contents and put it in the name. But I've been there when you have like cyclic inclusions or whatever. It gets really weird. And
I didn't solve those problems. So like if you want to solve it properly, I would say definitely use Webpack.
Did I say no production-ready code?
Yeah, there's also gulp rev replace.
Yeah, that's probably one of the older project has been doing it for a while, where you just add these kind of revision hashes to the name.
And Django has their own, and I think Rails has their own as well for doing the same sort of stuff. So we can see that sort of stuff's being output.
Cool.
So I gotta do the same for the rest.
So basically, you're just gonna add a list of assets that we are gonna need anyway to be offline. Probably the very minimal set.
Yeah, it's just the stuff that appeared in the network panel when we looked at that offline page.
OK. Then the revision is going to be added. And we can just use the vanilla add all cache command to just have them all be cached and be available offline.
Absolutely. So we can see that now, like all of those. And I
like that you actually called the picture me.jpg.
Oh, well,
It's not jake.jpg. It's not avatar. It's me.
No one else is going to work on the code base of my site. So it felt, no, it's not going to confuse anyone. OK, so yeah, we now have that variable there. And as you can see, I can just off we go.
That is actually pretty cool. I did not know about this module. I like it.
I love it. But we need to use it. Like we've cached all of these assets, but we've not told the browser.
Yeah, we're going to straight to fetch and therefore straight to network when a request comes in.
Absolutely. So I'm going to do another async function because I love them. So yeah, respond with and wait until they take a promise. And with install, if the promise rejects, then it will throw that service worker away. It's like, oh, this failed. And with respond with, we want to eventually return a response object. So async functions are a nice way of being able to do that and use async
I love
await.
async functions. It's just so much easier to think about these things.
So I'm going to do cached response here. Caches.match. Let's go for event.request. So here I'm just saying, hey, do you have anything in the cache for this thing that's being requested? So and if something, because it'll be null if it doesn't find anything. So which is false.
Which is something that I always have to remind myself of, because sometimes I expect it to throw or to reject the promise, but that is probably just for an actual error. And something not being cached is not an error, is like kind of like an expected outcome, which is why it's returning null instead of throwing.
But I tell you what, it does throw, and that's fetch.
Fetch will throw, yeah.
Yes, because if it is a complete failure to fetch, so it will throw what it's a promise, so it will reject in async functions that becomes a throw.
So somebody asked, how does that pipe code actually work? I have not used pipes before. Those are, as far as I know, the old stream implementations of Node. So Node had streams before the web platform did.
Yep.
And they had this concept of streams that you could pipe into each other. I mean, the web platform now has a similar stream, but the API is a little bit different in terms of piping.
Yes.
But if you want to know more about those, look up the Node documentation on their streams. Just Google for Node and streams, and you should probably be good to go.
Yeah, readable stream, writable stream, transform stream. That's all in the Node docs.
OK.
So yeah, it's just kind of it's piping those things together, but rather than passing the whole thing, it can pass little chunks of it along and sort of process it in little parts. It's kind of really nice and memory efficient. So I've kind of hit a little stumbling block, because here, so I'm trying to fetch the thing, and if that fails, I want to return with that offline HTML.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But the best I know of the URL is offline.html.
Oh, you don't have the hash once again.
Don't have the revision name. So this is where like the static module stuff is even more useful. So what I'm going to do here is create static.
So you're just using as a you're basically using this so you can keep your syntax hiding while just using it more or less as a templating engine.
Yeah. It's great, isn't it?
I mean, this is where Paul would say, it works. So yeah.
We don't speak about him anymore.
No.
So here, yeah, I've created a function, revget, which is just going to sort of pass it to that thing of like, give me the revisioned version. So I can just do here, revget equals require. You don't have to call all of these modules static at first. I just do to kind of, so when I look at the code, I kind of know which stuff is coming from like the static build system rather than stuff that's going to be left there.
Interesting question. Why return await fetch and not just return fetch?
That is a good point.
It's a very small nuance.
Yes, because if we return fetch, then what it's going to do is it's going to pass the promise back, even if the promise rejects.
We wouldn't know if fetch had thrown or not. It would just be a promise that rejects. But we want to be aware of a rejection because we want to catch it with a try catch so we can handle it. So that's why it's return await, which looks a little bit odd, but you get used to it fairly quickly.
Yes. So now if I refresh the page, right, we can see the sort of static revision there. The offline thing is there. That's
I'm
all
both amazed and disgusted by your use of static module.
Well, it's better than PHP templating, isn't it? So, so let's have a look now. So the service worker should have updated because I've reloaded the page. OK, so it's still waiting to activate here.
Yeah.
Like I said, that if you've got multiple versions of your app running, especially if you're dealing with data, you can end up with the old version and new version clashing and creating problems. We don't actually have that here because it's just a simple site.
Yeah.
So what I'm just going to say here is skip overwaiting. And just call that as a function.
See, I would want to write self-skip waiting, but it's totally unnecessary. You can just do skip waiting.
Saving those bytes. So now we can see the installing one sort of takes over instantly. And what should happen if I go offline and hit the refresh button? Right.
I mean, kinda.
So we're halfway there. So what has gone wrong? Interpreted style sheet, but transferred with MIME type text HTML.
Oh, do we actually block style sheets when they don't have the right MIME type? I thought we.
I think it could be a.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at the network panel. If the files are, I mean, yeah, so there is an all.css being successfully received. That is a service worker trying to fetch it, right?
Yes, yes. So, oh, that's interesting. So it's trying to do that. It's not finding it, and it's falling back to the offline page, even for the CSS. So everything is returning that that failure there.
Yeah, we don't
So-
quite want that.
So if we go online with this, what happens here?
That seems to work.
So the URL is correct. So it suggests that something is going on either with the caching or with the matching. So
Yeah. So we got a cache response, but we just threw it away.
yeah, I found it, didn't return it. That's fine. Oh, OK. I was getting nervous there.
But you're still online, so it doesn't count yet.
So I'm still online. Everything's fine. If I go offline now, it should work.
That is much better.
That's good. Oh, I'm so like.
We're panicking a little bit.
I was a little bit panicking. I got
See, he has a cheat sheet, but even then.
I've got like error-throwing sweats going on. OK. So we've got this whole offline thing working now. So that's pretty good.
How many browsers support the async operator? I think we're actually in a really good state. I think all the current stable versions support it of the major browsers.
Yes.
Let me I'll quickly check, can I use on the side? But I feel like if you don't have to go too far back, async, no, is it await? Async functions.
So it's everything except Internet Explorer.
Yeah, so Edge
has it.
does 15 since the most recent version 15. IE 11, which is the last version of Internet Explorer, does not. And all the other browsers with their current version actually do.
Yes.
So I would encourage you all to embrace it and use it. It makes especially with Service Worker, it makes the code much more easy to think about and to juggle the things in your head.
Right. OK, so let's have a look at how we're doing with this stuff. Because one of the things that I'm not happy with right now is that we're opening this static cache, right?
Yeah.
And that means like when we're updating the version of that, we're just going to be writing into the same cache, which is not so great.
Yeah.
And so that means that the newer thing might be overwriting things. It might be messing with stuff. So what we normally do.
That's generally something I sometimes struggle to. I always keep reinventing in my head. If you install a new service worker, do you want to re-download? Do you want to see what is in the old cache and manually carry over? And all these questions that you get, do you create a new cache or just reuse the old one? And then you can get weird in-between states. So let's see what you're doing this time in this version.
Right, so you can see on the screen here, I've made a version 1 there. So, and I'm going to like sort of add static versions. So, and that's going to be my cache name.
Don't you want to require the versions then because you want to change it?
Yeah,
Yes!
that is exactly what we're going
the concept
to do.
of Jake's code.
So what I'm going to do here is so updating this version number time and time again, that's going to be like it's going to be a real pain to do, right? So it's, we want to automate that somehow. So over in the roots file, I'm going to generate a version number automatically. So what I'm going to do is I need a version number that's kind of all of the it represents what's unique about that service worker. And it just so happens that we have a way of doing that, and that's with the URLs.
Yeah, OK.
So this is what I'm going to do now. So you can talk a bit while you can describe what I'm doing.
And now he's typing a const variable at the beginning. No, so the crypto module, that's actually a standard node module, which I'm always scared of touching because it says crypto. And crypto is basically, you never want to roll your own, so always rely on available implementations for these, especially if it's actually security relevant, which I guess in this case it is not really. But
yes. So let's have a look. It's not roll your own crypto. It's all there already.
Yeah, exactly.
So what I'm going to do now is create a hash.
Question on the side: what is the maximum size in kilobytes or whatever that a service worker can cache? And that's actually it's a very hand-wavy answer, I'm afraid. It depends on, I think, and maybe you have to correct me here, but I think the most recent answer I have is that is a fraction of your available space on your hard disk.
Yes. Yes, it is. So what the service worker can cache is part of like the sort of general what can the browser cache.
Yeah.
So you get a kind of shared space for IndexedDB, the cache API, local storage, all these sort of stuff. So, right, what I'm going to do here is, so I've created a hash now. It's MD5. Let's not be too scared of that because it's just, this is not for security reasons.
It's not security relevant. Even though MD5 is being discouraged for hashing the contents and having a somewhat unique identifier is perfectly fine.
Yes, and so what I'm going to do here is go through all of the URLs that I'm caching. So for each, and let's go for sort of URL and then sort of hash dot update. So this is going to add all of those things into their URL. So this is adding each URL into the hash.
OK.
And now I'm going to create a version number from that, which is the hash.digest. And I take in the hex of that. And that can be the version number for this service worker.
Also, you're creating a version number that depends on the static files that you're hashing.
Exactly.
And since they contain a hash, that means that your version number will change even if only the version of one of the dependencies change.
Yes. God, I'm sweating quite a lot. It's warm in here, isn't it?
It always is. You have to imagine we have some lights, because otherwise it would be fairly dark in here. But I guess I've gotten used to it at this point.
We can keep the camera on the screen so you can't see how much I'm kind of actually dying here. Right. So I'm going to do static version here. And what I'm going to pass through here is...
So the reason you're doing this, just to reiterate that I get it right, is you want the version of your service worker to change whenever one of your static files change, because you want the service worker to re-download all the files in that case.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
OK. So the problem would be if we didn't change the service worker file. I think they always still do the byte equivalence check.
It is byte equivalent, yes. And that's what it's kind of always been. And that's where things will stay in terms of that. So this is a nice way of making sure that all of that byte equivalence is
if you have a service worker installed, it's going to try to re-download it the next time you visit, I guess, and compare the code of the service worker file, the main service worker file. And if they are byte equivalent, namely the exact same file, nothing is going to happen. And if the dependencies have changed, your service worker wouldn't know about it. So that's why we want to make sure that our service worker code changes at some point if our dependencies change. And that's why we basically use the hashes of our dependencies in the version number. So we can make sure every change, not only of the service worker file, but also dependencies, will trigger a re-download of all the necessary data.
Absolutely. So now we can sort of see here inside the service worker file there, we've got that version ID there. And that's going to be used in the cache name. And that's going to carry forward into the service worker itself. So now if we load the page, that new service worker is going to come in. And I'm going to refresh the caches here.
See, that's the advantage of using a right click. I did not know that we had a right click refresh, because I always reopen DevTools.
Oh, you actually close and reopen it?
Yeah, I didn't know that there was. Wow, I learned something today.
Right.
Amazing.
But you can see there's a problem here, right? Like we've got the static cache name has got this sort of long hash at the end of it, which is what we want, but the old cache is still there. So I'm going to go over into the service worker code again, and we're going to fix that. So add event listener. So we're going to use the activate event.
So install is basically the service worker file has just been downloaded, and you can hook into this event and run some code to set yourself up.
Yes.
And activate is once you're done installing and the service worker is actually about to take over responsibility for all the requests of your site. That is where activate comes in, right?
Yeah, so at this point, we know that the old service worker is gone. So we're in a good position where we can actually start deleting all of its stuff that it needs.
I see.
So let's have a look. We're going to do keys. So what I want to do is look through all of the caches that are there, delete the ones that we don't need. So if I do await caches.keys, here we go. So that's all of those now. So I just want to iterate.
So you get a list of all the caches that are currently
yes.
available in your caches API.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go through each one, iterate over them, and if I find one that is, so if key doesn't equal the cache name that we're going for.
So basically, you're cleaning up after the old service worker. You are the new one. You know what name your cache has. And that means all the other old caches can be removed because you are already done installing yourself.
Absolutely. That is exactly what we're doing.
OK, I understand.
OK, so yeah, you can see there. And if it's one I'm not expecting, I'm just going to get rid of it. And so hopefully, now, if we reload the page,
we should have a new one, and the two other ones should be gone. That's what we're expecting, right?
Yes. So if we go into here, and that is what's happened. Excellent. So yeah, things are looking correct in the right shape.
It does look correct, yes.
So that means that when we add a file to the cache, it's going to create a new cache for that, like static with a sort of new hash at the end, and then it's going to it'll delete the old one once this. Okay,
we got 2 questions. One of them, why use await on cache keys? Is that async? Yes, it is.
Yes, it is, because the keys is that's stored on disk, right?
Yeah.
So anything that's stored on disk, we want to make sure it's not going to be blocking
async,
on the main
because
thread.
I/O operations on the disk tend to be very slow, and at least in terms of web time budgets that we have. So I think actually almost all service record APIs are async, just so we can have the opportunity to defer work a little bit until the browser has time to actually get to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've got a nice sort of streaming. Well, it's not streaming yet, but we've got this nice offline page, and we're controlling our caches now. But this is the point where we want to start thinking about the streaming stuff, right?
Yeah. Because right now, it's still just entire pages being cached.
Yes.
Actually, not even cached, but yeah.
Yes, but if we think about the pages that we've got, we can see sort of this column here is always the same.
Yeah.
So we could cache that. And we've also got the header along the top here. This is static as well.
This very complex black block.
that tiny bit there. Well, there's also the Jake Archibald wrote. That's
gotta put your name in somewhere.
Absolutely. So it would be nice to sort of deliver that before the network. So that's something that I want to try and do here. So we can deliver that bit and then start streaming the network stuff through. A pattern that you might have heard of to do this is called app shell.
Yeah. So app shell, I'm going to try to explain it, and you tell me if I'm right or not.
All right.
Basically, in the most primitive form, you have your header bit, and you have your footer bit, and then you have your content in the middle. But that means that you never have to actually re-download the header and the footer, but can just get the content in the middle and swap that out for the new content.
Yes.
And if you do it on the server side, it's app shell. If you do it on the client side, then it's basically SPA, single page app kind of routing thing.
Absolutely. So if we take a look at this example here, we can see that it's got the sort of gap of where the content would be.
Yeah.
And the typical way to do app shell would be to cache this, display this, and then let JavaScript go and sort of fetch all of the content.
So while the fetch is still going on, we are on like a very slow network or a network with very long delays. The user would already see this and be reassured that actually something is happening, that the network is working and something is being loaded, but it just takes a little bit longer. And that's why the streaming service worker is such a good user experience, because you can see something happening on screen for free.
Right. And the app shell model, the problem with it is that people if JavaScript is handling that fetch, it needs to download that whole article and then have JavaScript put it in, and that's where things get slow. And I have a demo of that. If we get to a position where we can do this one kind of correctly, we can compare it to the kind of traditional app shell model. OK, so the first thing I guess I need to do this is I need an endpoint that gets me just this center bit, the middle bit of the article.
Yeah, because if we want to do app shell, we don't want to re-download the header. That's the whole point. So we need a way to get just the middle bit.
Absolutely. So I'm going to create a template for that. So down in my template system here, I'm going to create a new file, and that's going to be post inc. That'll do. NGI. I'm not very good at naming things. I don't know why I design APIs.
Well, it's one of the hardest problems in computer science.
So I'm just going to copy what we have for the post template here. And the things we don't need is we don't need this extends bit. We don't need any of this header stuff. In fact, we don't really need the main content here. I'm just going to move that out. So this is the only bit we need. So now we just need to kind of come up with roots for that.
So if we run to that template, there's basically the entire header is missing. We have no header or footer. It's just going to be the markup. By itself, it's probably going to look really weird, because there's not going to be styles. There's going to be no layout whatsoever. But once put into the context of our header and footer, it is going to look great.
Yes.
Or like just as it's supposed to be.
Well, we'll see.
Let's not say great.
We'll see if we can get there. That's so here in the routing system again. What I'm going to do is I could create a whole separate route for these includes, but I'm going to cheat a little bit. And what I'm going to do is put a little include bit at the end there. And the regex for this is going to be the word include. So it's literally can only be that. And it is optional. And check out these hacks. So
I love it already.
The template name is going to be request.params.include. And if that's there, we're going to use post inc. Otherwise, I'm going to use post.
OK, that's pretty neat. I mean, so you switch depending on whether the the include option is present in the request URL or not, you switch out the template that is being rendered.
Absolutely. So,
cool. OK.
I mean, assuming it works, right? So the good news is no errors on the server so far. This is the normal page is looking fine. And if I go to include,
there's no styling. If we look at, can you do Command-Alt-U for me? So
let's say Command-Alt and U.
Got to teach you some shortcuts. So we can actually view the source. And you can see it starts straight with the div. It's like all the other stuff is missing. And now if we put that in between the header and the footer, we will be back at the original page.
Yes. So yeah. So now we just need to kind of do the rest. We need that the kind of start and end that we want to, the thing to wrap it all around. So we need to create a template also for the shell, the kind of the inverse of that, this page, but with that bit missing. So I'm going to do that as well. And it's very similar to before. I'm just going to call it, let's call it shell, or even spell it right. And let's have a look now. So I'm going to take the post again. It's a nice thing we can copy from.
Rip out everything else except the other bits.
Exactly. I'm going to come up with the title of loading, because this is going to be sort of displayed initially.
I see.
We don't need all of this header stuff. And this main content, we can get rid of it, because that's the post. We don't have that to display yet. And this is where we're going to put all of the stuff.
OK.
There we go.
For the people who tune in a little bit later, hi, this is a Supercharged live stream, and we are doing streaming service worker, which basically allow you to stream your responses to the client, meaning you will be on screen much faster and give your users a way better experience without having to do any sort of trickery. Because usually the network does it for free, but once you have a service worker in the middle, it is easy to fall back to easy habits and remove that feature of the web, which is streaming.
Yes. So with what we did with the offline page, we need to put this shell into the static cache. So here we are in that little build system again. I've copied the line, and I can just
even with multi-cursor.
Oh yeah, I like multi-cursor.
I do as well.
But the problem is, it's not actually what we want, because what I want to do is I want the start and I want the end.
Right now it's both, right?
And right now it's both. So I love this. So
I'm already afraid of what you're going to do.
So let's take the actual content of the shell.
OK.
So it's there. And the slice point is going to be content go here. Because that's...
Oh, my...
Because it's... Look, it's there. Look. So we're going to split on that. That's fine. So this is web development. This is fine. A
harmless comment that I thought was just like, to guide you is actually now going to become a programmatic instruction of where to split the shell into header and footer bits, because
why not?
Why wouldn't you do that?
So here we go. We've got shell start. And so what I'm going to do is, let's see, shell dot slice. And I'm going to take the shell dot index of, and it's going to be of that slice point. So that's actually going to give us the end. So I want 0 there as well. And I should just be able to copy that and
go for
end and just remove that there. And if everything works, then we can see that we've got the shell start.
Shouldn't you add the length of slice point?
I knew you were going to say that. Right,
because I don't want comments shipped to production, because it's a waste of bytes.
So what Simon's talking about is, like, in the end there, it's got this comment sitting there. So let's get rid of that. Here we go. Plus slice, slice point dot length. And now...
I feel much better now.
Are you happy now?
Yes.
And we can see that I saw that update. And there you go.
Perfect.
That stuff.
Perfect.
OK. So now we just need to start, we need to cache these.
So now, so we need to cache them, then we have them in the service worker, and then we can actually start stitching things together.
Absolutely.
Cool.
So if we want to add extra things to cache in the service worker, we're doing that in our routes right now. So I'm going to continue to do that. So let's go to shell start and shell end. There we go. I always like to just double check that this is actually working. So sw.js, and we can see, so we can see those things there.
Cool.
That's all working.
So that means now, because they're in that list, they're going to get downloaded on Service Worker install. We have them available in the cache. And we can use them to now do, and that's going to be a weird sentence, we can do the server-side rendering in the
server. Yes. Yes, it's kind of service worker side rendering.
That's a thing now.
That's a thing now. OK, so this is going to require a little bit more code over in our service worker. The first thing we want to do is kind of identify those pages that we're actually going to do this streaming thing with.
Because we don't want to put like images in between our headers and footers.
Right, right. So and the easiest way to, and this is one of the things where things like service worker toolbox and all of that sort of stuff come in really handy. But we're not using them.
So we are purposely reinventing the wheel a little bit because you can't appreciate what the amount of work these projects do for you until you have done it yourself.
Absolutely. So I've parsed the URL out here using the URL constructor, which is kind of part of the web platform and has been for ages. And that will give us access to all of the different parts of the URL. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to treat the rest of this code here as our sort of like general case.
Yeah.
That's how we're going to handle everything.
I always want, because I see when I write service worker, I do the same thing. I often do a new URL to get an actual parsed version.
Yes.
Why is that not part of the API?
Because Arne van Kesteren said no. I think it's more of a.
I mean, it is work that can be saved. We don't need to do it, and then it can be up to the developer. So I kind of can see that. It's just I see myself doing it so often that I was wondering.
So Arne van Kesteren wrote the fetch spec,
Yeah.
and so but he has a good point actually that everywhere else through the web platform we only give the URL as a string, except for window.location or self.location.
OK, which is a little bit of a special case, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think so. It's consistency, and you always have the option to do it yourself anyway. So.
Yes. So the first thing I'm going to do is, like I said, the service worker gets fetch events for requests the page makes.
Yeah.
And that includes requests to other origins as well.
That's actually super interesting, because you can cache requests and responses to another origin. You just can't inspect them, right?
Correct. Yes. I mean, if you've made a cause request, you don't get extra visibility.
But let's be honest, who uses cores?
Everyone uses cores. It's brilliant. It's how the security of the web works. So I'm doing an origin check here. So I'm like,
so everything that is your origin.
Yes, and I can just compare it straight to location.origin.
OK.
But then I'm going to have a look at the path name. So URL.path name. There we go. And I want to see if this looks like one of the articles. I'm going to use regex.
Because you already had somewhat of a regex in your backend, where it was like, we want 4 digits for the year and then some title.
Yes. So I'm going to do that. I can never remember with regex which way around the symbols are. Is it hat and then
yes,
dollar?
This is start and end.
Start and end. Excellent, because you don't want those the other way around, else it never matches. So it starts with a slash, and then it is, as you said, well, we could say, we could be specific, it's 4 digits.
Exactly 4 digits.
I don't expect my blog to be around once we tick over to 5 digits on the
Or have blog posts from pre-year 1000.
What will the world be like then? And then the rest of it is just anything that is not a slash.
OK.
I love regex. I mean, that's totally readable, right? That's.
Yeah.
You'll come back to that
everybody
code
will just
tomorrow.
look at this and be like, I get it.
I get it. Yeah. So if that happens, I'm going to defer to another function. Like, let's go stream article. There we go. I'm going to pass in the event and the URL. So, and this is the function we're going to write to sort of deal with all of this
Basically, that does the stitching of the app shell is the word I was looking for.
Yes, absolutely that. But I mean, we've been writing a bit of code. We haven't tested it for a while, so let's return new.
As a side note, Andrew Betts, hi. He asked a question.
Hi, Andrew.
Event.waitUntil. When to use it? Any rules of thumb? And yeah, what is your take on that?
So you use event.waitUntil whenever you're doing asynchronous work, and this tells. In some cases, it's the return value is meaningful. So like in install, if the promise rejects, then that tells the service worker this install failed, right?
Yeah.
Something went bad. Either we failed to cache some things, or like there was an error thrown or something, and the browser will see that as an indication of like, I'm not going to use this service worker.
Which is probably good, because if you have to work on like a broken basis to bootstrap your page, your installation should go flawlessly. Otherwise, it's better to be like,
absolutely,
let's not.
Yeah, and that's another good reason to use like unique cache names when you're updating, because you don't want to kind of do half an install and botch it, and you've already messed around with some of the stuff that the current version's using. So whereas with Activate, wait until it's just a signal that you're doing work.
Yeah.
And then the browser will prevent fetch events coming through until you've done that work. Fetch also has event.waitUntil, which is a way to say, look, I've sent the response, but hey, I'm doing some extra work as well.
And that's actually really interesting, because you can say event.respond with and already have your response ready, and then have to do more work after the response is already given out. So try to get to call respond with as fast and as early as possible to get that out of the way, so the client, the actual browser, can continue working, and then continue with updating the cache or whatever you want to do in the background.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we are going to use that in a minute as well.
Oh, cool.
But first, I just want to make sure that all of the stuff is working. So starts there. So I'm going to use a feature of Service Worker here of our dev tools called Update on Reload. And this is one of my favorites. It means like, because currently we refresh the page, and then it looks for an update to the Service Worker.
Yeah.
It finds it, it installs it, and then you have to hit refresh again to actually get code running through that new Service Worker. This here means it shortcuts that. It just takes one refresh. It finds a new Service Worker.
So usually you would have to reload. It checks the Service Worker, downloads, installs it. Would have to reload another time for it to actually activate. While this just throws away the old Service Worker before the reload, downloads the new one, and that one gets installed.
Absolutely. So now we should be able to just hit refresh, and that new Service Worker comes in. That's fine. This is what we expect. But if I go to this article, it says this is an article. Excellent.
I mean, it's somewhat of an overstatement. But
I mean, how much text do you want in your article? But what that does is it confirms that we're correctly identifying that URL.
The root regex, the cryptic one, is actually correct.
And we can see that the includes, it's not capturing those. It is just the overall article page. So, right, this is where we want to start doing the actual magic of tying all of these streams together. So what I'm going to do is gather all of the parts that we're going to join together. So I'm going to do caches.match revget and static. So the first thing is the shell start. And once again, I'm using revget to...
The first thing we want to send back is the header, because we know it's always going to be the same, and we know we have it in cache.
Yes.
We don't even need to worry about the actual content right now. We can already start streaming that bit.
Because that's the sort of generic part, so that's all working fine. And we're going to do the end as well. But in between those two bits, we want to send the actual content down.
Yeah.
So I want to fetch, and I can't just fetch the URL here, because that would be for the full article page. What I want to fetch is that include part. So
right. So, and that is probably where it comes in, that you just put something on the end, because you can just take the request URL and add /include.
Well, I'm going to be a little bit safer than that.
Ooh, look at you.
Yeah, well, because, like, for instance, if there was a query string at the end, like a search string as the web platform calls it, just adding include to the end of there, that could start breaking things. So you can see here I've done new URL that kind of clones it. So I've got a copy. And what I can do here is do path name plus equals include. So now that is going to add it to the end of that URL there. So I can just fetch that, and that should work. But now this is the part we want to sort of tie all of those together.
Yeah, so each of these responses from the cache and from the network are by themselves individually streaming. But usually, I remember when I first wrote these kind of service worker, I would just turn them into a text blob, concatenate them, send them back, and that is not streaming, because that would mean I would have to wait for the fetch to finish before I would start sending the header.
Right, and if you do that, you're going to have that whole problem where you're having to buffer the entire response before anything comes through, and that's no good. So what I'm going to do is, so we want a writable endpoint that we can sort of feed all three of these to, that will turn it into one readable point. So because with a response, you can give it a readable stream. Like this here.
Instead of a string, you're not passing in
that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a for loop where we can sort of go around each of those parts. But first, I need to create this readable and this writable object. And there's going to be a great feature in the web platform that can do this for us. So I can do a readable, writable, and that equals new transform stream. Now, a transform stream is a thing that's going to take like parts, like things in, and chuck something else out. So transforming the response in some way. But if you don't provide any of those details, it just takes stuff into the writable and pipes it out of the readable. Bad news is we don't have that on the platform yet. So we're going to have to sort of hack our way around it. And I'm not going to write that now. I have a hack prepared. Thank you, Gist. This is an identity stream. So why didn't I just do this for the whole thing? It says, I have a project here already built.
I have a few snippets. I'm just going to stitch together. See, you learned a lot today.
Copy, paste.
So the thing, I think it is absolutely legit to copy paste in that bit because it is part of the specified platform, just browsers haven't gotten around to implement, or actually the spec is not completely finished as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, they're still working on that, but we think it's going to be landed in Chrome in the next few months. So like sometime before the end of the year, which maybe means it'll be next year, but we'll wait and see. But what this polyfill is doing here, it's creating a readable stream and a writable stream, and we can see here, sort of inside the writable, when it receives some data, it's just passing it to the readable.
So it's literally just like whatever you receive, put it out on the other side. It's literally a pipe.
Yes, yes. And that makes our code like so much easier to write. Because now we're responding with our readable stream, but we're not putting anything into it yet.
OK.
So this is where we need to actually start creating that. And so we want to do a little bit of asynchronous work. So do event.waitUntil.
Oh, I see.
So
I was wondering if you forgot to make this function async, but you're actually doing an anonymous async function inside.
Yes. Okay. And so while we're doing all of the streaming work, this is instructing the browser like, hey, don't close the service worker. We've still got important things going on. You need to let us handle this. So what I'm going to do is go through that array that we've made, all of those parts.
OK, cool.
Let's call it parts, because that would be a better name. So now I've got each of those, and I'm going to get a response object from each.
Couldn't you use for_await?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So there's a new thing appearing in the platform, which I don't think we have in Chrome yet.
Oh, we don't? Then never mind me. I thought.
But yeah, you're right. We could do that, and that will process the promise.
So we are iterating over an array of promises because both caches.match and fetch return a promise. And with for_await, it wouldn't. For would iterate over the array and give you the promises. For_await would give you whatever the promise resolves to and would wait with a looping until that promise that is the next one, has resolved.
Yes.
So yeah, I'll check if we have it.
Well, we definitely don't have it in stable, and that's what I'm using. I wanted to use Canary, but it turns out that this morning all of the network throttling and offline stuff is broken in Canary.
Oh, that's cool.
So like a peasant, I've had to go back to Chrome
stable.
I know, it's terrible.
What a nuisance.
So OK, so we've got this response now for each of these parts, and what I'm going to do is response.body, which is the stream of the response. And I'm going to pipe it to the writable. And
so that is your pipe call that we have seen earlier in the node environment. It's similar.
Yes.
It's not the same, but it's very similar.
Yeah, so it's differentiated in web streams. We have pipe through and pipe to, which is kind of whether you're dealing with a transform stream or whether you're dealing with a writable. And I need to await that because we're going to let that happen. And now, by default, when you pipe something, like a readable stream to a writable stream, once it's complete, it closes the writable. It says, I'm done. Now you are done as well. We can all go home. It's fine. But we don't want that to happen here, because we want to write to all three parts. So there's an option here called prevent close.
To prevent closing.
Yep. It's actually
very well-named option.
Lovely, nicely named. But once we're here, we actually do want to close it. I mean, you could do fancy things with the loop where you detect if it's the last one.
I can just do it after. I think it is arguably more explicit.
I think it's fine. So so here I'm going to do writer and get writer from memory.
Writable, get writer. Right?
Thank you. I knew that didn't sound right. So writable get writer, and this is holding a lock on the stream, so we can do stuff with it after all of the piping's done. And then I'm just going to call close and tell it it's done.
So that means, so now that would mean that the response no, the writable should consist of the header, then the content, then the footer.
Yes.
And to the browser, it would look like it is one document.
Yeah, as far as the browser's parser is concerned, it is just receiving one response. Like the whole thing about it being 3 parts, that is entirely inside the service worker.
OK.
Now, aha, I just spotted a bug. I've still got transform stream there. So let's change that for identity stream. I'm going to copy and paste
transform
it.
streams can actually transform. You can hook in code and do some transformation. Identity stream is what we said, like just whatever you get, just don't do anything, pipe it back out.
Yes, and the default for a transform stream will behave like an identity stream.
OK, so just to recap, we are taking the header, which we have in the cache.
Yes.
We are taking the content, which we are fetching live from the network, which could be a little delayed or not. And we are taking the footer from the cache again, which are 3 individual responses. And these responses are now being stitched together so that to the browser it is one document. But even if the actual content is delayed, we're still starting to send the header straight from the cache. And the good thing about that is that we would actually see something on screen, even if our network is being weird about sending or has problems with actually getting it fast enough to have like a fluent delivery for the whole thing.
Yes.
So I guess at this point, we can actually try and see if this works or not.
Yeah, that's the moment of truth, eh? So let's have a look. So we've got identity stream. We've got all of our parts here. It's all looking correct.
I mean, if you can just look at JavaScript and say it's correct, that is actually hugely impressive.
Well, I can't, so we should find out. I tell you what we should do. We need a way to sort of know that if this is working. So in the shell, where it normally says Jake Archibald wrote, I'm going to put streamed. So we're going to know that that's working.
So it means if we reload the page without the service worker, it will say wrote. If the service worker is actually doing its job in between, the wrote at the top in the green box should turn into a streamed.
And it did.
Amazing.
Look at that. That's amazing. I'm so glad that worked. So yeah, so what this is now. OK, there's a problem. Has your eagle eye spotted?
I have seen the problem.
The problem. So what we can see here is like
what used to be Unicode.
What used to be Unicode is now not. Yeah. OK. So this is a problem.
Sounds like you stripped a little too many of the meta headers, maybe.
That is exactly it. There's the response here. There's no response headers at all being sent. OK. What we really want is something. So what I just did there is a shift reload, a command shift reload.
Yeah. That passes the service worker. It goes straight to the network. Bypasses, not just passes. It bypasses the service worker.
So what I can do here is have a look at this. So this is the content type header I'm normally sending. So I'm going to like.
I mean, you could also put it in your header and say meta charset UTF-8, right?
Yes, I could do that, but you know, doing it on the server side.
Yeah, that's
why
fine.
wouldn't I?
Fine, Jake.
But it seems good to have some proper headers.
Yeah.
Right now, we're not even telling it it's HTML. It's just coincidence. That's what the browser will interpret it as. So here, I'm just going to do content type, and there we go. And what should happen? So if I'm going to keep the update on reload.
Yeah. So we're going to get the new service worker straight away.
So we should see it straight away. And
it's streaming. We have the right content encoding. So we just built a streaming service worker, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Or you did.
Yes, we did. And I think that's all we need. Oh, there's one thing that we need to fix, and this is a problem that I think we need a better solution for in the web platform.
OK.
And that's that we've got this. It still says loading up here as the title for the page.
True. Oh, changing titles. That used to be all the rage in the 90s. We would have like little animations going on.
So, and that is the solution that we're going to use here. So it's just here in the article include. I'm just going to do a script.
Oh, that is
amazing. It's horrible and hacky. It would be nice if we could have multiple title elements, and that one would replace the other, and it would sort of update, with whatever the last title element it sees is. But what I can do here is just let's go for meta.title. So this is coming from the scripting, the templating engine, and jakearchibald.com. And so now, there, it's updating.
Nice.
And that's.
We just got a question. Is there anything like incremental cache update, like diffing or something like that?
There is not, but it's something that you could build yourself inside the service worker. So you could be sort of fetching stuff.
Yeah.
That you could, you tell the server, I have this version of this asset, or it has this hash, or whatever, and then the server can go, oh yeah, I know the history of all of this stuff. Here is just a diff to apply. Whether that's something that's going to be useful in the long term.
I don't know. So just as the final proof of this, can you do this with network throttling? So we can see that the shell appears right away, but the content gets streamed in.
I thought you'd never ask, and I think that's kind of what we should end on, and have a look at what the app shell compares to the idea of using it with JavaScript. So let's put the throttling all the way down to GPRS, because it makes it look
the
better.
Slowest of the slowest.
Well, is offline slower, or is that just broken?
Is nothing still something? Who knows? Now we're getting too philosophical in here, I think.
So I've turned update on reload off, so it's not going to try and update that service worker. Yep. And I should just be able to reload the page.
So you can see. That was actually really cool to see. And if you didn't, did you have screenshots enabled?
Screenshots are enabled.
OK, so we can revisit what we just saw, namely that I think in a matter of a fraction of a second, we had something on screen, namely the shell.
Yes.
Like straight away from the service worker we sent, here's the header.
So we can have a look here, and you can see that. So here's the sort of paint time. If I just shift and so kind of 65 milliseconds, we got that first paint of that top bit of content. And if we move along to where is the next paint? Sort of around here. So that is at 1 second. That's when we actually start getting the article content, and that's coming from the network, and that's the bit that's being throttled. OK. And so that's so yeah, I'm going to rely on you to remember those numbers. So it's about 1 second for content.
I have an entire audience to remember this for me.
Oh, excellent. OK, so if everyone can remember that stuff, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can remember Git, because you see I've done a lot of code now. So I'm going to git add. Would that work? Would that be also files that haven't been added to the index?
Ooh.
Do you know what?
Yeah,
let's do this. I think you might be right. And I'm just going to call this
a temp commit, because why wouldn't you?
Why not? Oh yeah, I haven't added my name or anything
That's
to
fine.
this. So so now I'm going to do checkout and app shell. Excellent. Right, that's worked now. The server's restarted. So let's refresh the page. So this is now just, I should turn the throttling off, because it's let it update that service worker. So we should see that there. That's fine. OK. So if I refresh the page, it says I app shelled some content. Excellent. So that's the proof there that it's that it's actually changed. So now we can compare this, and this is so the difference here is it's loading in the shell all at once. Yeah. And then it's going to that JavaScript is going to pick up all the content from the same include, and then it's going to insert it into the page. So we should compare this, obviously, to this over the same network speed. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a fair comparison. Absolutely. So we've got GPRS on again, all of the same sort of cache settings, and we can load it now. So yeah, you can already see the difference. There was enough time for us to look up to the camera and look confused while we're looking at an empty app shell, and it's still going. So if you have some kind of single-page app, this kind of streaming service worker can make the experience of opening and loading a site so much better. Yeah. So we see we got the first render. That was still quick. But the final render there was kind of like 3 seconds. 4 seconds in, which is, and this is obviously not a full blog post, I think. It's just some text. If you have a longer blog post with some media assets or whatever, it can get worse. Absolutely. Some of the longer articles I've got on this, it goes up to like 8 seconds, whereas the streaming one is always there, kind of pretty much straight away. And it's also slower because you dump all of that HTML like right at the end. That's the point it discovers all of the images and stuff it needs. So those downloads start much later. Also delayed. Yes. So it is basically a win all around. Yes. So, I mean, that is how you do, I guess, a streaming service worker. And just to be clear, it's actually kind of cool. You just did that in stable. Usually, we are very prone to being on Canary with web platform flag enabled and doing all the bleeding edge stuff. But this works in Chrome stable and actually works in Firefox as well, I Unfortunately not. They don't have streams yet. They don't have streams yet. So that's their blocking thing. Safari doesn't have service worker. Yes, Safari does. But they have streams. Yes, so if they could just exchange some code. Yeah, talk to each other and be like, oh, can we just soon? I hope.
We
Yes.
will be on a platform where everybody has Service Worker and streams, and we can do these kind of performance tricks much more often. So as I said, we're going to put this piece of code that Jake wrote, going to put it up on our GitHub repository.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone who came by and talked to us in the chat and asked questions. I hope you learned something. And thank you, Jake, for taking on the challenge. I think you did amazing.
Thank you.
And with that, have a good Thursday, and see you next time.
Bye-bye.